Welcome back in. Mean Streets here live on FTN Network, presented by So Rare here on Game Plus Network as well. Let's get into the Toronto Blue Jays. We did a little bit of an AL East preview a couple weeks ago with MLB Dream. We focused more so on the division. We dove into the Baltimore Orioles, not so much of the Toronto Blue Jays here. So an exciting, fun team, lots of offense, lots of offensive firepower last year, second in the division, rattled off 92 wins. Fourth in runs, seventh in homers, and second in team WOBA. A powerful, powerful squad. About a month ago, when the win totals were released, they were at 90.5. I see 91.5. I see 92.5 using our prop shop as well. They're plus 220 to win the AL East. They are plus 700 to win the pennant, and they're 15-1 to win the World Series. I like all those bets. In fact, I am going to take a shot on them to win the division. I will have a little bit of a sprinkle as well on them to win the World Series. I do live north of the border. I am not a homer, believe it or not. It would make me feel a little bit better about my Halos if the Jays weren't this good about squeaking into a playoff position here. But I think the Jays have a complete package. I love their lineup. We can transition over to some of their weapons using ADP from NFBC, as you see here. Most teams, I put like 7 or 8 players. I could have put a couple more players here. I mean, there's 10 here, and there's 9 guys going within really 150 picks in high stakes leagues. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the first baseman off the board at pick 11, suffered a knee injury, is not going to suit up in the World Baseball Classic, which is going to get underway here very soon. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to suit up, but I think Jays fans can breathe a sigh of relief that the injury is not going to he's not going to miss a lot of time. There's no structural damage, so that's pretty good. But you have a lineup here atop the order: George Springer, Bo Bichette, Vladimir Jr., Alejandro Kirk. You got Daulton Varsho, who's the guy that I addressed off the top of the show. You bring in a lefty bat. That's been my one issue with this lineup for the Jays over the past couple of years. I know they tried to bring in Freddie Freeman a couple of years ago, but they needed a lefty to kind of split up this order. They have a lot of heavy right-handed hitters that smash southpaws, and you needed some lefty bats in here to kind of split up the order. And that's exactly what they've done here with Daulton Varsho. Daulton Varsho, according to some of our projections, we have him for 29 bombs. And Varsho is a guy that, against lefties, he's not going to be near the top of the order, but he can hit. He can play against lefties. And 26 of his 27 home runs last year did come against right-handed pitching. He hit 240 against them, only 221 against lefties. But he's not going to be a platoon guy. This is a guy that is going to play nearly every day. He's got the catcher outfield eligibility over at NFBC, which is super appealing from a fantasy standpoint. He's the second catcher off the board after JT Realmuto, and you see he's the 11th outfielder off the board on average. His ADP is 36 over the last 2 months, NFBC high stakes league. So last year he had 27 bombs. As I mentioned, he chipped in with 16 stolen bases, hit 235. So the average probably gets in around 245. I think he can get up to 250. Zips has him projected for 255, but he did have just shy of under 600 plate appearances, 151 games. So you put him in the lineup, whether he hits cleanup, hits in that 5 spot. After him, Matt Chapman, which you see on the board as well. On average, the 11th third baseman off the board. Brendan Belt is another lefty bat, which they brought in, who I think is a pretty sneaky late round pick in fantasy. Certainly somebody we're definitely going to be talking about from a DFS perspective, from an MLB props perspective, when the Jays do have a matchup against a right-handed gas can or a high fly ball, high contact pitcher on the bump, a righty, where Brendan Belt will find himself in the lineup. Whit Merrifield was pretty underwhelming last year when he was acquired by the Bluebirds, but I do believe he still has a little bit to offer. He's not going to hit 300. He's not the same player he was with the Kansas City Royals just a couple years back. He was really automatic with the Royals, leading off for Kansas City multiple years and chipping in with a lot of stolen bases and not a lot of power. He did hit 11 bombs last year, but this is somebody just 2 years removed from 40 stolen bases, 16 last year across Kansas City and Toronto. Just under 140 games played and 550 plate appearances. He hit 250. He's a career 285 hitter. He really should bring more to the Bluebirds than he did last year. And then Kevin Kiermaier as well, going to hit in that 9 spot at times. Gavin Biggio on the bench, who is some highs and some lows with Biggio over the past couple of seasons. But Kiermaier is a really good defensive center fielder, always been among the leaders in WAR. Is not going to give you a lot really offensively. Maybe he hits 10 bombs and he steals double-digit bags, but he's like a 220, 230 hitter. But there's a lot here to like about this Blue Jays team. As I mentioned, 92 wins last year. I like the over 91.5. I even lean to the over 92.5. I think that this team could win the division. The Yankees are the team to beat. The rotation's fantastic in New York, really adding Carlos Rodon on top of Garrett Cole. Severino is a healthy season this year. I like Nestor Cortez. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this Yankees team does have a lot to offer. They do have a lot of firepower as well. Of course, Aaron Judge and a lot of great bats inside that lineup. But so do the Jays. The Jays have a lot of really good bats inside that lineup as well. The fences moved in. We may see more homers. I already saw a lot of homers anyways inside Rogers Center and inside the division. There's a lot of hitter-friendly parks inside the division as well. And I think there's a lot of really interesting Jays. I wouldn't shy away from any of those players. Like Bo Bichette will give you some power and some speed. Vladimir Jr., if you're drafting today, you're drafting the next couple of weeks, maybe he drops down draft boards just a little bit. But clearly this guy has got a lot to offer as well. The one player that I would be shy maybe of drafting would be George Springer. I just want to see what we got for George Springer in terms of projections. Quan, if you can chuck up that board again, just one more time with some of these bats. We'll address the pitchers in the next block. I want to show you some of the projections that we have courtesy of Vlad Sedler. But George Springer, 133 games last year, not bad. It's the most that he's played since 2018. I know that 2020 was a limited campaign, but he has suffered if he's been bothered by some injuries. It's not an easy place to play at Rogers Center, especially for an outfielder as well. But George Springer, when he's playing and he's healthy, he is one of the better outfielders in baseball. It's a bit of a steep price to pay. A top 20 outfielder, you got to pay a top 70 pick basically here for George Springer. Last year, 25 bombs and 14 stolen bases is the most that he had since 2015. So he was running when he was healthy, which is something that we didn't really see with the Astros. But the Astros are a team that, they don't really steal bases. And why would you when you're Houston? You got so many contact hitters. When a guy's on base, you don't want the threat of getting tossed out. And I think the Jays should have that same sort of strategy, really. They do have some speed at top of the order and Bo Bichette and certainly George Springer here. I mean, I could count 5 guys, double-digit stolen bases. I'd say Varsho, as we mentioned, and Whit Merrifield and Kiermaier. And, of course, Bo Bichette is a guy that can flirt with 20 stolen bases here pretty easily as well. Even Vlad may steal a couple bases, who knows? But a really nice lineup. I wouldn't shy away. Like Vlad, like Bo, love Varsho, especially get that catcher eligibility. It's fantastic. I don't like to reach on a catcher, but you also get the outfield eligibility mixed in with what is a very powerful lineup. I'd probably pass on Springer. Kirk, don't really like I said, spend that top pick on a catcher, top 100 pick. It's not really for me. In high stakes leagues, you got to have 2 catchers. So I understand, the thought process here. Like Chapman, he's got a lot of power. I think he can provide a little bit more than he did last year as well. We'll take a quick break and we'll address some of those pitchers because as you see on the board, there's a lot of really appealing arms there, and Gausman and Manoah and Chris Bassett, which they brought in as well. So we'll take a quick break and we will continue the Toronto Blue Jays talk here. But man, a lot to like about the Bluebirds. We'll talk about the staff here next on Main Street. It's back in a couple. This is from Vlad Sedler. It's included in the fantasy baseball package. Vlad is super sharp. Has had a ton of success in high stakes leagues. He's got rankings. He's got projections. And you see some auction values on the far right. Man, Vlad's got it going on. You see Jordan Romano there as well. On average, the 4th closer off the board. We have him projected for 33 saves, a 2.85 ERA. I think if you're in a rotisserie league, especially in a high stakes leagues, you just can't avoid closers. You can't. I think you have to get a top 10 closer. Top 5 it's a little rich for me. Just to give you an example, some players that are going around Jordan Romano, and I think he's fantastic. I do believe he is really close to that elite tier with Emmanuel Clase and Edwin Diaz, but Christian Javier, Luis Castillo, these are guys that I really like that are going in around that range. I would definitely, take Romano over like a Rutschman or a Perez from the catcher standpoint. O'Neal Carrez, Eloy Jimenez, and around that way. Corbin Carroll has got a lot of speed to offer. Alex Bregman, Teoscar Hernandez, George Springer, Max Fried, Zach Gallen. There's a lot of names that I do like in this range, but I'll tell you what, if you're in a head-to-head format, it's an easy fade for me because it's just one category, and it's that simple for me when it comes to strategy. But if you're in a high-stakes league or a rotisserie league, you're just not going to be able to compete. You're not going to be able to win your league if you're not at least midway through. Like, if there's 12 people in your league, you got to be top 6 or 7 in saves. You have to be. If you're first, you get 12 points. If there's 12 people in your league, if you're last, you get 0 points, and you're just not going to be able to compete. Now, my strategy is to take a top 10 closer then to take a couple, maybe one that you feel outside the top 15, like a Fairbanks or Tampa or something like that, you feel could get in the top 10. And then you got to be active on the waiver wire. But if you're in a draft and hold where there's no waiver wire, you can't punt it. You have to get yourself, whether it's a top 5 closer or a top 10 closer. But again, a head-to-head format, maybe it's not something you need to do. The staff here, and you're really going to have to decide, can we transition back over to the ADP and then quickly back over here to the rankings? Quan, if you could do that for us, just to give us a feel. So you're going to have to decide on what pitcher you want. As I mentioned, Romano, pitcher 4 off the board in terms of closer, on average, pick 63. Kevin Gausman, pitcher number 17 on average, ADP is 64. Alek Manoah, pitcher 20, ADP of 69. Unless you're picking at the end, you can double tap one of these guys if you wanted to go that route. I don't really suggest it, although it's probably not the end of the world. You do have to make a decision. So it can go back over to the projections and show you here. My favorite is Alek Manoah. I personally think he's got the highest strikeout ceiling, even though, as you see, we have more strikeouts here for Kevin Gausman. But Alek Manoah, as a rookie, 111 innings, he had a 10.24 K per 9. He walked 3 batters per 9, but last year over 196 innings, the K per 9 came down slightly. 8.824 is not really that appealing. Anytime you're under a strikeout per inning, it's not super sexy from a fantasy standpoint, but the walks came down as well. And is a guy that had a 2.24 ERA. The xFIP was much higher at 3.97, so maybe that stabilizes a little bit. Maybe he lives in the 3.5 range in terms of ERA, but I do believe he's got a lot of swing and miss. I think he continues to improve with each start, each year as a starting pitcher. Yankee fans know they don't like Alek Manoah. The guy lights up the Yankees left, right, and center. I think the safest pitcher is probably Kevin Gausman. He has a double-digit K per 9 in 4 straight seasons. He doesn't really walk a lot of guys. 1.44 walks per 9 last season was his best mark in the bigs. He has a bit of a fly ball. He's a bit of a fly ball pitcher, but doesn't get him into too much issue. I mean, early on in his career against Baltimore, he was, obviously Camden's not a great pitcher's ballpark, and it's changed over the past couple of years, but he did give up a lot of bombs there. But he did, kind of change a few of his mechanics, and some of that you got to give credit to the San Francisco Giants. They do wonders with pitching, and you could see the change certainly in San Fran. I mean, he Cy Young, right, candidate there. I believe in 2020 with a 3.62 ERA and then a 2.81 ERA his second year in San Fran. So a little bit more, even though I said I feel like there's a higher ceiling with Alek Manoah, I think that there's a, untapped fantasy or potential there in his game. But Kevin Gausman, a little bit safer, a little cleaner, more command, more control. And certainly he's got a pedigree here, 4 straight seasons having a double-digit K per 9, 28% strikeout rate last year, 29.32 in 2020. Chris Bassett, I think, is a great target late in drafts. Is a guy that's not going to strike out a lot of dudes, kind of lives in that 9K per 9 as well, and is not going to walk a lot of guys either. He's had some really nice campaigns over the past couple of years. I mean, 3.42 ERA last year with the Mets, 3.15 with Oakland. Great hitters or great pitchers ballpark. So that may have helped him a little bit. Maybe 9.1 was an outlier in terms of a K per 9 in 2021, but I think he can get up into the 8.5 range. He's not going to hurt you anywhere. The ratio should be pretty solid. I expect the ERA to be under 4, if not just slightly above 4. And, he's going to rack up some wins. I'm not going to sit here and say, chase wins, but as a guy that's going really late in drafts, I don't even know if he was on that last board that we showed, maybe near the bottom there, is a guy that you can take pretty late in high stakes leagues. You need, to roll out 9 pitchers per week. I think he can get double-digit wins, and I don't think he's going to kill you anywhere. The guy to fade is Jose Barrios. I mean, I haven't really ever been a fan. This is a guy that's got an 8.84 K per 9 for his career. He's struggled with walks. Early on in his career, he struggled with walks, and it looked like he cleaned it up a little bit. Last year, walks didn't really hurt him. He was among the leaders in hard hit rate. Barrel percentage, 9.5%, was one of the highest marks in all of baseball, according to StatCast. And you look at Fangraphs and see that 52 barrels against him was the 4th highest in baseball. I'm worried about the velocity. He doesn't strike out anybody. And like I said, just gets rocked. And it's a tough division. You're not going to play as many division opponents this year as years past, but Jose Barrios is easy fade for me, as you see on the board. I think Vlad's being a little conservative with his projections. Highest ERA here, only 165 strikeouts in 160 innings, and the highest whip among the Jays as well. So that's the Jays preview. A lot to like about the Bluebirds. I think they win the division. I like the over 91.5, and I'm going to take a little bit of a sprinkle on 15-1 to win the World Series.